And in other news, this is the Gillmor gang, and have I fulfilled my contractual obligations?
Yeah,
Thank you. No, absolutely not.
You have to sing 3 songs.
Okay, what are the 3?
Doesn't matter. But that's the contract. You got to sing 3 songs. Love Me Do, Yesterday, anything. Penny Lane.
Love Me Do with or without Ringo?
Well, Brent could play Ringo.
It's a trick question. He was on all 3.
I get into this.
He played tambourine on one of them.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man,
Oh, shit.
play a song for me.
Hi, I'm Bob Dylan.
Now, yeah. What if? Can you imagine Bob Dylan at his bar mitzvah? Barakatoy, Adonai, Halloween.
Yeah, that's some Belzer material. Thank you.
Yes, it is. Belzer,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, so that was Frank Radice phoning in from parts east.
The United Kingdom.
Okay, so you
Having
say something
tea.
now, and then I move to the next introduction.
Did you get enough for a lower third there, Tina?
Maybe. Jeez.
Okay, the guy who's chuckling is Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
He still hasn't worked out the synchronization between his sound effects button and.
I'm working on it.
Okay, well, we got that to look forward to. Joining us from the state of Massachusetts, and we know what kind of state that is Denis Pombriant.
If you knew anything about Massachusetts, you would know that it is a commonwealth, not a state.
Here we go.
Oh, I actually do know that.
Yeah,
Your point?
We know you know.
I don't
Okay,
have to have a
so
point to have a point.
This is enterprise value at its finest.
Finest.
Okay.
Finest thing.
And then there's with his new Facebook, what is it called?
Portal.
Facebook portal, which with a wonderful, soft, automatic zoom that he will demonstrate, I'm sure, as much as he possibly can, is Keith Teare.
Is that the portal we're seeing you on right now, Keith?
It is. If I stand up and walk around while singing, I once had a girl, or should I say, she once had me. If I walk around, it will follow me.
Oh, that's so cool.
Ooh.
Who knew?
Wow.
Too much backlight. You need a little front light there, Keith.
Well, that's just if I walk over to the window. If I stay
Yeah,
here,
you still need a
zoom
little
out.
front light.
So Keith, I have a question. How do you go to the bathroom?
Carefully.
Normally I walk, unzip my pants. pee.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Let's put a little lower third on that, please. Just so you know, Keith, the audio, terrible.
And I don't have any control over it.
I understand. So can you get closer?
I don't know if that will really help. You can probably hear my dogs in the background as well, which normally you can't.
Well, I wanted to see if it zoomed out.
So now I'm closer. Is that?
It's a little better. It's a little bassier. We'll have to live with it. You'll have to speak up.
Or I could abandon the portal and go back to this screen.
No.
behind.
I'm good with that. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll stay here. I'll call in on this one, then I'll drop that one.
God, it's so technical.
Isn't
Now,
that exciting? Okay.
This is
and then
the reason
we're
that we do
patting.
this show.
Look at all we're
I'm
learning.
glad there's a reason.
We're learning
There's a
how
reason.
Keith goes to the bathroom.
Ah, that's the reason.
There we go again.
Then
Who takes their phone to the bathroom with them? I want to know.
it is no great shock to me that Denis is obsessed with my,
Let's
bathroom.
just stop it right there. Okay.
Well, nobody answered my question. Who takes their phone to the bathroom with them?
Everyone, right?
Okay.
And is
I
it
do.
while you're watching videos, while you're having communication with someone, while you're reading, looking at TikToks?
Are we seriously going to discuss what we all do in the bathroom?
You know, you brought it up.
Here's how this works. When you say something and you're on a live stream, you're doing it.
Yeah.
So,
And then
what question are we trying to understand here? I mean, do I have to go to the list? Yeah, there's a list. Here's the list this week.
It's a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure is. Okay.
How's my audio now, by the way? Is that better?
Yeah, that is
Yes.
better.
How's my video? Is that better?
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
You
Just
mean
let
your
me know when
NFT video? Okay.
Oh my
Just
God.
let me know when the bathroom talk is done, and I'll reappear.
Okay.
Thanks.
We're done.
Brent's the enforcer,
Where's
basically. He won't play unless, there you go. Okay.
Oh, great.
All right.
Game's over.
We tried to pad long enough for Michael Markman to join us, but he'll have to come in during the festivities. Speaking
Oh.
of which, can you please?
What a shame he missed that first 5 minutes.
I know,
Poor
it's
guy.
mortal.
Boy, gonna be sad about that.
All right. So, Michael, can we have an audio check, please?
Yes, here is my audio check. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Okay.
Right.
So this is the Gillmor gang, and the first question goes to the Republicans.
Okay.
See ya.
What what are you guys thinking?
With,
About.
Any of the above? Seriously. I mean, how bad can it possibly get?
Don't ask
It can get
that.
pretty bad. It can get pretty bad.
It can get worse, as evidenced by history
Or-
of the last
or-
4 years.
Or, Frank, to put it in the opposite, it can get a whole lot better for us as it gets bad for them.
Now, that's a theory that I don't think tracks, actually.
Okay.
It's kind of like waiting for them to suddenly, become productive and positive.
Steve,
I think we'll keep waiting.
can we get
But, you know,
about what you're talking about?
I don't think the California recall vote really said a lot about what was going to happen to the Democrats later. I think a lot of people have made a lot of noise about that, but I don't think in reality that it did. Because I mean, isn't California primarily a blue state anyway? And it just seemed to me like there was a lot of noise being made about that.
I agree with that. The key thing to recognize is that Democrats and Republicans are not homogeneously distributed across the U.S. They tend to cluster in certain states. So I think there's nothing bad that you can say out of the California outcome, but I don't know how much good you can say out of it.
oh, I don't know. I think we're missing something here. This was an off-year election. The Democrats have a great advantage on paper in California, but they had to get to the polls. And what the result shows is that it wasn't a close election. The Democratic base is big and it's fired up. And that's the lesson that I think you take for 2022.
Well, I agree with that, but that works in purple states and blue states. There still will be the red states.
Do you think that a lot of people are also talking about the all the talk about election rigging, which Elder even and of course the former guy talked about even before the voting began, affected the outcome on the Republican side? That is to say that they didn't come out in force because they felt that their vote wouldn't count because the election would be rigged.
I think that's a logical conclusion. I haven't seen any data about it.
Yeah,
But
I haven't either.
It seems to me that they really are hurting themselves by telling their voters that votes don't matter. It seems like the logical.
I think that's wishful media thinking. I don't think, like you said, I don't think there's any data to actually support that.
I think there's an awful lot of wishful media thinking going on. I mean,
I mean, one thing to realize is that the radical end of the Republican Party is not just at the end; it's most of them now. Over 76% of Republicans believe that Biden was not legitimately elected at this point.
Oh, isn't that true?
That's 76% of a minority, but they are energized, and within that 76%, there are radical people who will take action on that.
So I saw a survey this morning that compared immediately after the election, 70% of Republicans thought Biden was not the legitimate president. Yesterday, the same survey showed that 78% of Republicans think Biden is not the legitimate president. So it's fairly clear that the Republicans are doubling down on, whatever it is they believe more and more strongly than they did ever before.
I don't necessarily agree. I think that the Republicans have always thought that if a Democrat was in office, that he was not legitimately elected.
No.
Well, yes.
I don't know about that.
I don't think that's binary. I think that there are degrees of illegitimacy, and we're at a level now where they believe it's outright fraud that the Democrat has been nominated and elected.
But what that means is if you're a Republican standing for any office, you are probably afraid of the base. So you're going to stick to the line, even if you don't agree with the line, unless you're principled, which of course none of them are.
Well, 2 or 3 of them are.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of months ago, Keith and I had this discussion, or something like it, in which I talked about the Republican Party going to farce or farcical mode right now, and Keith was kind enough to remind me that the whole tragedy versus farce is a Marxian concept. But I think it's working out, and I also think that we should pay attention to Malcolm Gladwell's tipping points, because if you've already got 76 or 78% of the Republican Party, but by the way, those numbers are identical. That's a sampling error. It doesn't mean anything. But what it does show is that you've only got a little ways further to go before the whole edifice crumbles. And I think we're watching the lead up to that crumbling.
Yeah. Are you saying the sort of the destruction of democracy?
No, I'm saying the destruction of the Republican Party.
Which is another way of saying a one-party state.
They're already there. It is. I mean, it's not a Republican Party. It's a.
Yeah. I mean, if it crumbles, it will be replaced by another right-wing party.
Yeah.
Well, another conservative party. The United States needs a viable conservative alternative, a viable conservative input into the political discussion. We don't have that right now. We've got magical thinking.
From history, we can see the collapse and replacement of parties, but mostly that happened in the 19th century. In my lifetime, I haven't seen a good one. But
how about the Nazi Party? That collapsed pretty spectacularly.
The Liberal Party,
it took a long time, though, from 39 to 45.
I think the Liberal Party in the UK, which used to be the Balance of Power Party, if you remember, during Major, was it Major? Who was the Prime Minister? Cameron. When they had power sharing, because they.
Well, if you don't remember, Keith, who does?
Well, I don't remember anything, so that's.
Well, yeah.
And by the way,
until the Lib Dem leader defected to Facebook.
And he did. And the British Labour Party is currently unelectable. So Britain really is a one-party state. In most respects, it's a one-party state. Even though there's a plurality of parties, none of them could ever hold power.
Now, it mystifies me that the Labour Party is unelectable. Why is that?
It's a long story, but basically, if I told you this story of my mother's voting record, she's passed away quite a while ago, but she's a mini version of what happened. So when I was a kid, she voted for Harold Wilson, And Denis Healy, the white heat of the technological revolution was the core slogan in that election. And Britain had things like ICL and this whole kind of modern industrialization mantra. Wilson came in, and before too long, there was something called the social contract, where he asked the unions to hold back wages during massive inflation. And Labour kind of became disillusioned. Voters became disillusioned because Labour became a capitalist management party. And so my mum actually ended up voting for Thatcher later on, just as a protest vote against Labour, because she was a union organizer, so she was a natural Labour voter and never.
So this is the short version, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Wasn't Trump elected as a protest vote against Hillary Clinton?
Well,
I
think what
it
it means
seems-
is if you disappoint your base, you're screwed.
It seems to me that that a lot of what we're talking about has more to do with who the individual is that is the candidate versus what the candidate actually cares about.
I don't think that's wrong, but I think it's only part of the story. I think the other part of the story is, did you deliver anything for me? And if so,
Well,
what?
that's part, and it might be sufficient, but it's not the only necessary piece. The thing that I'm noticing is that the party that does best is the party that can tell the best story. Ronald Reagan was not the best president, but he told the best story. He's not known for any of his policies. He's known as the great communicator.
Well, he was a pretty good storyteller, actually, better than as an actor.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Hey,
That's what I'm saying.
how did that
Even Donald
trickle
Trump
down?
is a good storyteller.
How did that trickle down economy thing work?
It's still
Oh.
trickling down. I get it all over me. It's no fun.
How did that tax the rich thing work?
Oh, we're trying that again, aren't we?
We haven't tried
Did
it
you
yet.
see? Did you see AOC's dress at the Met Gala? I think Michael.
I think everyone did. That was the social media before Nicki Minaj and her cousin's friend's big testicles
Balls.
became
Yeah.
the social
Wow.
media
Now,
top
this is
story.
enterprise value at its finest. Part two. Okay, so
the
let me cut to
hell?
the chase. Hang on a second. Let me cut to the chase by asking you, what was the impact of the California recall smashing victory by that guy whose name I've forgotten?
Newsom.
Yeah, thanks.
Gav.
All right, I'll start with you, Brent.
Oh no, don't do that. Why don't you ask me something like, up my alley? Like, what did you think of the Manning brothers Monday Night Football presentation versus the traditional broadcast?
Who are the Manning brothers?
Oh, the Manning brothers. Come on.
Groucho, Giuseppe.
Giuseppe Gummo. Who was the, in terms of screen time in the Marx Brothers, who had more screen time, Zeppo or Gummo? There is
Oh,
a
Zeppo.
Gummo was
Correct.
never on screen.
What?
Who's
Gummo was
Gummo?
never on
What the hell is
screen.
that?
No, he was.
When?
10 minutes ago. I don't know. He was definitely in the act, and
He
by
was in the
screen
act,
you mean
yeah.
in vaudeville, which I do.
Well,
So
in the movies,
who had-
by the time of their first movie, it was the four Marx Brothers.
Who had more
in
screen
vaudeville,
time,
there was a
Curly or
Gummo.
Curly Joe?
Wow. I'm going to go with Curly on that.
This show,
Oh, yeah.
this show is truly going south. Going to Brent in Atlanta is symbolic of that.
No, I'm just getting some some Brent time early, so that when he's quiet for the next hour, then it'll work out.
You asked about AOC's dress. Like, what the hell? I don't know where. I was watching football. Wasn't that thing going on? The only thing I know about it is Russell Wilson's wife, Sierra. Apparently, she wore a dress that was like his jersey, which is nice.
I just
That's
want
all I
to know,
know.
Brent, how the hell did the Raiders win that game?
Now, that is a great question. Now, I mean, first of all, they lost it like 3 other times before they didn't lose it, and then they won it when there was no way that they should have won it.
Exactly.
And who's on first What's on second? I don't know who's on.
When I pay attention to football, American football, you know it must have been a good game. I was gripped to the last second.
Wow, that's
So,
cool. You know what? This year, I feel energized by this conversation. I don't know why. Talking about football. We've had a lot of good games this year already.
How did the Manning brothers do versus the Trump family in the boxing match?
What the hell, Trump family boxing match? What are you talking about? Did I miss something?
Yes, you missed something.
You must
I
have.
was hoping we would miss that some more.
The Trump family boxing? What the hell
Why,
is that?
No.
Why are we talking
No.
about that, Frank?
When I don't know it, because you got the Mannings and you got the Trumps. That's all.
How do you get those two confused? I don't understand.
No, I don't think there was any confusion. I was just actually throwing a hand grenade into the
There is
conversation.
confusion now.
You don't know about that boxing match that was voiced by the Trumps? It had 150,000.
That was the community show.
Yeah, 150,000 pay-per-views. They lost so much money on that boxing match; it was ridiculous.
This part, I like this part. I like.
I don't understand this. What boxing match and what are the Trumps doing?
It was Holyfield who replaced some other guy.
De La Hoya.
Who replaced De La Hoya, and he fought this guy from the MMA who was actually, a fighter.
Must we even bring that up?
We're doing play-by-play or blow-by-blow.
Well,
let's forget
bringing up sports. It's good for everybody except me.
But that's not sports. That's not included in sports. Not that. I don't know what that was.
Spectacle.
Just a joke.
It's actually those people have to join Actors Equity, don't they, Frank? They're entertainers.
They already are. He couldn't have done, for example, The Apprentice if he wasn't.
Yeah. It's not legitimate sport. It's entertainment.
Yeah, and I think they called it an exhibition anyway.
I'm sure it was that.
Yeah, and it didn't last very long.
Oh,
hey, look who's on.
Hey, Tina.
Hello, I have a question. Interrupting. So many of you watch TV. I know that past few days probably have. Tomorrow is September 18th. Barricades are going up around the Capitol. Fencing, barricades. They're preparing for something. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about all these barricades going back up? What does it mean? And what does it mean for our future? Is this going to be commonplace?
It's horrible that the barricades are going up. And I don't think there's going to be any major violence anyway. I think all the noise that's been happening up to and including this point where they put the fences back up has pretty much done its job to quell what could have been really bad. This is an event that's been publicized and made to happen by one person, not by a large group of people. The former guy's not a part of it. All of the Congress people that were a part of the 6th are not a part of the 18th. I think it's a lot of noise.
There's a very important aspect that I don't think I've seen any of the pundits talk about. On the 6th, there was a clear objective. The objective was to prevent the Congress from certifying the vote and keeping Trump in power. They had a goal to reach. There is no goal for Saturday. If they show up, what happens? Nothing happens. On January 6th, they did have something in mind, that somehow the certification would be paused or stopped or thwarted, and Trump would stay in office. Well, they missed that. There's nothing on the horizon on Saturday that they can accomplish. So why would they show up?
It reminds me of when I was a political activist, we would, every now and then we'd do some kind of big protest and some people would get arrested. And then 2 weeks later, we'd do another protest saying, we'll never forget the people who got arrested. And at that moment, you knew that you'd lost.
Do you remember any of those people that got arrested?
Exactly. No. It's what all protesters do, right? They move from whatever the main point was to defending those who, were locked up as a result of the first thing, and you end up having these memorials every year to somebody that's no longer with us or is in prison, who becomes.
So let me circle back around to my initial question, which is, what was the impact of Newsom's victory?
I think it's to reaffirm the status quo post-election is still in place, pretty much. If you look at the county by county votes in California on that, it was within 1% of the general election vote in every county. So it pretty much was the status quo is still in place. There's been no slippage on the Democrat side and no gains or losses really on the Republican side. So,
I think there's one aspect that comes out of the exit polling that's not in the general totals, and that is that the pandemic was the number one issue for people. The Republicans have made a number of bad bets, and one of them is that being on the side of the virus is the path to victory. And within their tiny base, maybe that is the case, but by and large, that's not the case. People want to see stronger measures to try and wrestle this virus to the ground. So I think that's something to bear in mind. And when look at the election next year, a lot of it will have to do with how well we've succeeded or not succeeded in bringing down the infection rates from the coronavirus.
I agree with that strongly. To me, it's a teaching moment in American history, which is when the rights of the individual are less important than the needs of all of us. And that's a rare thing. Individualism has had decades of wind in its sails, both on the left and the right. And when you say to people, you have to be vaccinated because we all need you to be, and you do not have the right to disagree, to me, that's a fantastic example of us being a society, not a bunch of individuals.
Denis, what's your thought?
I don't know, a couple of things. Number one, I've already said a few things about the importance of the election. I think Keith makes an excellent point there. I would only echo it. We as a society we avoid talking about responsibilities under our form of government. We talk about our rights quite a bit. What we don't talk about is the duties that we owe each other. Yet, if you go to law school, if you go into court, especially in civil matters, a lot of what gets translated into guilty verdicts or not guilty verdicts is how individuals performed their duties. And I think it's actually quite refreshing to see that that those ideas are sort of surfacing again after a long time.
I mean, there is a lot of resonance between ideas about public health and public responsibility for things like taking care of old people, taking care of young people, taking care of giving our general responsibility to our commons, to our infrastructure, to our broadband infrastructure. That's something that the Biden administration is going forward with on all fronts. And I think we may well be at a tipping point where we're moving from the me to the us.
Except for Manchin.
But even Manchin, I mean, Manchin is partially there. He's a problem, but he hasn't completely gone the other way. He was part of, for instance, getting the first infrastructure bill passed. He was part of getting the rescue bill passed. He has always, at the end of the day, voted with the party. I think he's going to push to try and make the package smaller and get some things cut out of it. But he's not on the other side. He's just kind of a governor, a little bit of a braking pressure on the Democrats.
There was a story that broke a couple of days ago that I had not heard that he is an owner of 2 coal facilities in West Virginia.
Coal mines, they're called.
Coal mines.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
2 coal
he's got
mines.
a lot of dirty money.
Exactly. Well, if you do what the former guy said, you just, clean it. Little Clorox cleans it right up, and then you have clean coal.
Then you have clean coal, right? Right.
Yeah, there you go.
And his daughter, his daughter raised the prices of EpiPens, so he's got a very personal interest in the question of drug prices and negotiating drug prices, which makes him look kind of stinky corrupt.
Well, how in the world? And I this is something that kind of baffled me over here in the UK, because I didn't know the details of it. But how is it that the House decided that they were going to not pass the negotiated drug prices bill? How did that happen?
There were 3 people
moderates.
on the committee. 3 people on the committee, 3 Democrats on the committee, which I think put a pause in it. I don't think it's definitively decided that will not happen, but it was definitely, at least for the time being,
paused
delayed.
for about 20 years. So
Yeah, that felt to me like saying, no, you know what? We don't want clean air, or we don't want clean water. Or we don't want lower drug prices. It just seemed wrong.
I'm
You know-
not giving up that it won't be on in the bill when it's finally approved, but it was definitely a horrible setback.
Yeah.
So much of this is kabuki. It's Shakespearean. The lady doth protest too much. There is nothing in the legislation. There is nothing in the Constitution that says you have to file one monolithic bill for something like this. If I was the Democrats, I would play gin rummy with this. I would go down with 15 in my hand, and if it's $1 trillion, I'll take it. I'll be back next week with another bill.
Or next year. I think this is a set of issues that Democrats can run on in 22.
There's one thing nobody's talking about that I think is very interesting. It was in a column by Paul Krugman maybe a month ago now. He took a look at the gross domestic product over the next 10 years, and it was projected to grow an enormous amount. I don't remember exactly how much, but he said this spending bill, $3.5 trillion, is going to be paid out in 10 increments. And he said, if you look at just the delta between where we are today and where we're going to be at the end of 10 years in GDP, we're looking at spending 1.3% of new GDP on increasing our productive capacity. When you put that out there in front of people, even somebody like Kirsten Sinema or Joe Manchin has to say, well, gee, $3.5 trillion isn't really that much money.
So Denis,
It's over 6 years, right?
10.
But that way of thinking, it's interesting. In my job, we have this thing called a J curve.
Yeah.
And a J curve is, the line is 0, and in the early years you invest money, so you have minus numbers. When you invest in a startup, for example, your fund goes to minus until the startup is worth something, and then the J curve crosses over the 0 and goes up.
Right.
And it's interesting in politics. You would think that investing $3.5 trillion would have a J curve. That is to say, the value that would be created from it would be on the graph in years 5 through 15 or whatever, and you'd be able to sell the whole thing not even as a 1% of GDP, but as a contribution to growth of the.
I agree with you. The
Sell
only
that to
problem is
economists.
that you don't have a single entity that you're going to derive an ROI from. It's an omnibus bill. It's got lots of spending in it. Some of the spending is going to have a quick return. Some of it's not going to have a return for 8 or 9 years.
But you can make these arguments to economists. I don't know if you can make these arguments to congressional critters. I don't think most of them are very sophisticated. They can't even follow this argument, and much less the voters at large.
But then there's a lack of leadership, because let's say if I was standing and I wanted to sell a J curve to the American population, I would have to start with a vision for America 10 or 15 years from now that was very attractive, something I would want to describe an America that everybody would want to live in. And then I would want to talk about the investment required to get there. And then I'd want to talk about the net plus economically of getting there and how it actually wouldn't cost anything and it would modernize society, blah, 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 blah. So where is the leadership narrative that makes it attractive to spend money? I don't.
Well, we're trying to save the planet at the moment.
Keith, what you just said echoes what I was talking about earlier about who's the better storyteller.
Well,
It's not simply
it's
leadership.
interesting because if
It's
you
the
listen,
ability to tell that story.
if you listen to Biden's speeches, he's telling that story. It's not resonating and it's not getting through.
You know, he's telling the Cliff Notes version of it.
And he's
Yeah,
probably
but
telling-
hang on a second. Before we get too far into this metaphysical layer of analysis, from a practical perspective, is Biden doing better with his speech yesterday, which I thought was excellent, by the way, in terms of moving the needle to keep himself in office and at least preserve leadership in the Senate?
I think if you're playing defense, you'd say yes, he is.
No, I'm asking for an answer, not a if this, then that.
Yeah.
You think that he's doing better? Yes or no?
Yeah, the answer is yes, but not good enough.
For what?
The answer is yes, but
for the future of our children.
The answer is yes, but it will be just better. It won't be good until we actually get these congressional votes. Then we will find out that he's either pushed the ball over the line or he's failed to.
Right. Well, I know, Michael, that you don't like to predict the future, but is he going to get those votes?
I believe he will. Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Frank?
Yes, and yes.
Okay. Brent, is he going to get those votes?
I think so, because if he doesn't, what's the point?
Okay. Keith?
No, I definitely think the Republicans are on decline. They won't go above the high watermark that they've already had before, and therefore the answer has to be yes.
Okay, good. And Denis?
I think the answer is yes. Again, I'm a big believer in kabuki. I think somebody like Joe Manchin is locked and loaded to make rumblings about the filibuster when the time comes. But I think it's important that they are all protesting too much. It's their job. It's their job to be in the middle and be non-committal until push comes to shove. That's the difference between a senator and a governor. Governor's got a biased fraction.
I would say, Steve, I do want to defend what you described as the metaphysical, because I don't think it's good enough for the leadership of the world's richest nation to focus only on the short term. I think they have a responsibility to the human race to focus on the long term. And the long term, by definition, is unknowable, so you have to have a plan.
Well, I understand your perspective. What I'm saying is that I think the Newsom recall vote clearly establishes that at the end of the day that the Democrats have enough political power to be able to push this across the line, which is evidenced by everybody's vote here, which is yes, they're going to get a bill. I think the most interesting bill is the voting rights rewrite, which Manchin basically drafted, which seems to have a long way to go to be able to get anywhere. But I would say that it's going to pass as well.
Mm-hmm.
Does it pass without some kind of of a takedown of the sort of the policy of the way the votes are done? I mean, is it can it just become
It's carefully drawn.
a majority?
it's carefully drawn from my limited understanding of this. It's carefully drawn around some issues which can get bipartisan support. And
So-
therefore, it's establishing the idea that Congress can actually say something on this issue. And it opens the door for future votes when the Democrats have more power.
So one of the things that was talked a lot about during the Newsom recall was that when the former guy came out in favor of elder care, that thank you. That when he came out and did that, that basically, put the nail in that coffin, similar to what happened in Georgia. And I don't know, because it seems like Georgia was a long time ago versus right now. But is it legitimate to consider that if the former guy puts his hat in behind some candidate, that it's going to hurt them and not help them?
Again, it depends on what district and what state you're looking at. I think except for the hardcore Republicans, yes, it will hurt them. It's a strange system we have now, where the gates to a Republican nomination are guarded by fanatics, and anyone who wants to run as a Republican has to get through the gate that's guarded by fanatics. But the general public, in most areas, in most states, and certainly in the suburbs, is not with the fanatics.
That's almost always true, that the activists in a party are the most committed to an ideological framework. And the real question is there any other potential organizing group that could replace them? And I think in the Republican Party, you've got to say not that I can see.
I think you're right that it's almost always the case. But if you look at Biden versus Bernie Sanders, the Democratic voters said, no, we're not going to go to the edge. We're going to go a little bit towards the middle. We're going to go with the centrist guy. We're not going to go with the edge guy. The Republican Party doesn't have that phenomenon.
Well, if you look at Biden and his relationship to AOC and Bernie, he represents something they could embrace.
Yes.
So he didn't ignore them or sideline them. He kind of recruited them in a way.
Yes, he did, and I think that a lot of his policies, were contributed to by Bernie and by Elizabeth Warren and by the whole group of advisors that he has that are pushing him towards the left. But he presents as a centrist. He is very radical, I think, in terms of his policies, but he presents as a centrist. And in terms of the Democratic primary, that's where the majority of the voters went in most states.
Yeah.
There's a piece of data that I came across this week, and it's not really data. It's an over the horizon observation. And it's this week I heard many times how the Republican base only represents a third of the nation. And it's been repeated several times. I watch cable news, so it's been repeated there. And I think I even saw it in an article in the Times or the Post or something. But I think that's significant. I think that is the dawning of a move in our politics.
Well, I think there are moments in history where ideology becomes a liability. And I think ideology is currently a liability because most people want to get stuff done. And the Republicans haven't yet woken up to ideology as a liability. The Democrats kind of have. And even the level of self-control that AOC and Bernie are exercising is kind of evidence that they understand that. So, this is not a moment for ideology. It's a moment for doing things. And if the things, help an ideology solidify, like we versus me, that's great. But they couldn't make it happen through that narrative. They have to actually just do stuff that we all think is good.
or they
Funny
have to
that-
be, they have to lose. They have to lose grandly.
Multiple times. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that, I think that's media wishful thinking that they're going to lose big. I think they're going to lose incrementally and then continue to lose. And I
Well,
think
but-
that
but
who they?
the inevitability of the fact that they don't have, that they're a minority with fringe, factions is going to hurt them. I mean, every time that one of the mini Trumps, and the governors, acts up, they're basically, threatening. Trump has to get worried about that because, they're carving away a percentage of his minority vote.
Well, consider the incipient contradiction that we're about to see. Earlier in the week, we saw Gavin Newsom face down a recall. Tomorrow, we're going to see a bunch of yahoos, maybe some of them in hats with horns on them, going to DC, standing outside a chain link fence and reminding everyone of January 6th. That's not a good look. That's a bad week for the Republicans.
Yes. And let's not lose sight of the fact that there's some events over the horizon that are going to land sometime before the election. One of them is the January 6th select committee from the House issuing a report. One of them is whatever is going on in the New York Attorney General or in terms of Trump. And one of them is what's happening in Georgia in terms of Trump. So we're going to see a lot of things that are not currently in the news make their way into the news over the next few months.
Yeah, including Arizona.
Yeah,
We're finally going to hear something from them.
The other notable thing, which is only a bullet point, but the very fact that protest is, or commemoration, whatever it is taking place and is allowed to take place, is shines a light on the fact that we live in a democracy. Because these are people that most people strongly disagree with being allowed to march in DC. Money's being spent protecting property buildings from them in order to support their right to do it. And so, there's something fairly wonderful about the fact that protest is taking place, even though you completely disagree with everything about it.
So I want to button this up by commenting on something George Will said, and I'm just paraphrasing that. But his basic point was it was a mistake to put the fence up because there's nothing that these guys are really going to be able to do.
Yeah, but if they didn't do that and something did happen, it'd just be crazy.
Oh,
I thought that, Steve, I thought that
Will's point is, I think, something to pay attention to, which is as his assessment of this event, post-event, is likely to be accurate.
I think you have to.
I think that was part of what George Will was trying to say. I think the other part of what George Will was trying to say was that it's simply just a bad thing to do. Not just because it's a bad thing to do because they won't have anything to be able to do because there's a fence up. It's just a bad thing to have a fence around the Capitol. I think he was also making that point.
Well,
Yeah.
I disagree with Will on a couple of points. A fence around the Capitol is icky, and a fence around the Supreme Court is icky. They are going up temporarily, and they're coming down. But putting them up is a reminder to everyone that we have a government. We have a government that insists on being a government and will not be pushed around by idiots.
Yeah, but it might get pushed around by losing the House in 2022. So, I think that his.
Well, that has nothing to do with the fence. That's more with redistricting. That's besides.
Well, I mean, the problem
I don't see
I
don't see a single bad thing that comes from the fence.
The problem with January 6th was not whether there was a fence or not. It was that there was nobody willing to give orders to people in the government and on the street, security. Nobody gave the order. And
Exactly,
my
but-
point about the 2022 is if we lose the House, we run the chance of losing the presidency again. And if we do that, given the current state of the Republican Party, what is going to prevent them from putting some guy in?
I don't
office
see the
who doesn't
line
call
from
in
the fence to the
the
house.
guard?
I don't see that. The other thing that you said, that there was nobody willing to give the order to call out the troops, that because we didn't have a government then. We had the former guy. Is a visible symbol of the fact that we now have a government, that there is someone there willing to call out the troops. The fence represents the troops. The troops don't have to stand on the street. The fence is a visible symbol of the fact that we now have a government that's going to stand up for its own self-preservation.
So you and I disagree about this. That's exciting.
But the issue of losing the House is a serious one. That is more connected to the voting rights bill and preventing partisan redistricting.
I don't disagree. What I'm trying to do is to put a point on a conservative talking point, which I think has merit, which is, do we really need to send a signal that we're afraid of these guys?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that is, for looking at it from Keith's larger worldview perspective, I don't know that that's a leadership.
I wouldn't say afraid of them. I would say that we're giving them a certain amount of power when we do that.
Oh, I don't agree. I think this is all tied up with duty, and I think I'm closer to Michael on this. It's the government's duty to put up that fence. It's just as it's that government's duty to have 100 National Guard troops billeted very close to the scene. Which
right. I agree. Just like it's the government's duty to initiate mandates about the virus.
Vaccine.
And
vaccine, yeah. I think that was a good move. I think that Biden has triangulated the necessary base to be able to drive that through and reduce the unvaccinated. So more power to him.
I do think that having been an organizer of protests many times in the many decades of my life, a fence is not going to be an effective deterrent to a determined mass of people. So the real issue is, how determined are the mass of people?
Yeah, and what Will is saying is not that determined.
Yeah.
And I think he might be, hopefully he's right to Brent's point.
Yeah, but the thing is, unless they storm the fence and knock it down, the presence of the fence will be a sign of victory. There's no way of arguing that the fence helped them. The fence stopped them. If they don't do anything, the fence stopped them. The fence justifies itself. If the protest fizzles, the fence justifies itself.
You guys are familiar with Buckingham Palace with a big wall around it, right? How many times have you seen these headlines about people getting over the wall and getting into the palace grounds, even into the bedroom of some of the royal family?
I think that was once.
Yeah, one time.
Yeah, but the truth is, the real question is there an insurrectionist group that want to and can threaten the state? And I think the answer to that is ambiguous. That there clearly are people who would be quite happy to have guns and shoot them if they thought they could win. But they're a small minority.
Okay, I'm calling time on this. Anybody want to talk about anything related to the technology community?
Apple.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
what about
what
them?
about? Oh,
I love the new camera on the iPhone 13. I wish I had bought one instead of buying my iPhone 12 4 weeks ago.
You know, they offered me $790 for my iPhone 12 Max Pro as a trade-in, which I could get a lot more than that on eBay, so I didn't say yes. But it would have cost me like $800 to get the $1,600 iPhone 13.
Above the trade-in value, you mean?
Yeah, another
Yeah.
$800 above the trade-in value. And I've had it for a year. So if you divide 52 into 800, that's roughly what it cost me per month to have the iPhone 12 Pro Max.
Mrs.
I mean,
Teare,
I like the iPhone 12 Pro, which I have. I feel bad I didn't get the Pro Max, but I like the 12 Pro. It's a great machine. But the camera and what it does on the 13 just sounds unbelievable. And I've been talking to a number of my cameraman friends, professionals around the country, all of whom are saying things like, "Oh my God." You know, they're hearkening back to carrying an Ikegami over their shoulders that weighed 25 pounds, that couldn't shoot as good a picture as these things can. The fact that it can rack focus, the fact that it can do that sort of thing after the tape has been, or after the file has been shot, all of that stuff makes this an absolutely amazing piece of kit to me.
Yep. Do you remember the company called Foveon? They produced a sensor that did that and produced files that you could post focus about 10 years ago.
They didn't succeed. Why?
No,
well, they didn't
expensive,
build an
wasn't it?
affordable package. You know, they had tech, but they didn't have a product.
But
Brent,
it's not
what do you
unlike LiDAR was a
hang on,
big thing
before,
that people.
I want to hear the previous comment. Brent, what do you think about the new camera?
I want it.
Do you want it enough to actually spend 800 divided by 12?
Carry the two. I do want it. I laid out. I don't buy the new phone every year. I'm still working with was it the 10? So this is perfect for me. Get a little money for turning in the 10 and get that. And I'm with Frank. I mean, 2 years ago, I wouldn't care much at all about the video stuff on these iPhones, but now it's like huge. And it's not just me. Think about all the work from home video, and now you're going to be able to do even more quality stuff with your iPhone. I mean, such a smart move by Apple to really up the ante for that.
There was a post on, because I follow a professional cameraman's post on Facebook, and so there's an awful lot of people asking for people with gear in various cities, and they want to spend less money nowadays than they would have spent before. When, look, there was a time when you couldn't go out in the field based on the union requirements without 3 people in the field. So you had a camera person, and you had a sound person, and you had a lighting person, and that has become one person in the field that's doing all of that. And now my friends who are out there with all of this gear that they've spent tons of money on and accumulated over a lot of years are saying that they can do all of the same kinds of things with this new iPhone that they were able to do with their Ikegamis up until maybe a year or so ago.
And in the case of the Ikegami, they would need a focus, a guy doing focus and stuff.
Yeah.
So one person can do what 3 people were needed to do.
Yeah. I have a Rode microphone with a connector that hooks up to my iPhone 12 on a stick that I can go around and do interviews with, which I have been using. And so the 12 Pro is still a great camera. It really works well. But the little tiny piece of difference between the 12 Pro and the 13 is enough for me to go, I gotta go do this.
I ordered one this morning.
Wait a minute, really? I'm shocked.
Yeah, no, I can't believe that.
Me too. Me too.
It was
Did you order one too, Michael?
Yes, I did. I did.
Oh man, no. What about you, Steve?
First thing that I did when I got up, I think even before the coffee, I said, "Oh, you can order them today. I'm going to do that."
I don't plan on doing rack focus anytime soon. So probably not. I think the 12 Pro Max that I have is excellent.
Wow.
Well, actually, the 13 will also do rack focus.
Steve
without even going to the Pro.
The 12 Pro Max won't.
Steve always has.
I know that, but the lower priced 13s will do the rack focus.
Yeah, but I'm
Down to
not
3 lenses,
interested in
huh?
the lower priced ones. I'm interested
Yeah.
in the loaded for bear, the big box.
I understand.
I guarantee that Steve will sometime in the near future, maximum 90 days, change his mind and buy one.
Definitely getting one.
Well,
But will he rack
And
focus?
Tina, what do you have to say about that?
I say I get one first.
I've already,
Time.
I've already,
I've got an 11 right
factored
now,
in
so.
Tina's opinion. That was the reason I brought this up.
Mm.
Okay.
I should say, by the way, I have an iPhone 10, so I skipped the 11 and I skipped the 12.
So that's good for you. Both of you and Brent
You're
are
both very disciplined.
Dennis, what are you playing with there?
This is a 10 as well.
Yeah.
And what's your plan? Are you going to upgrade?
Can
I'm
we get a
saving up for
Gillmor
a
gang
Tesla.
group rate or something for the
I
folks that have the
just,
10s?
I just want our listeners and viewers to recognize that anyone who has the 10, don't trust a word they say about tech. Because
Or they're the only ones that actually have any kind of standards and credibility.
Now, I will say this, I have access to a 12. Someone in my household has a 12, and it is a huge advance over the 10.
So
The
when you
camera-
do your rack focus, you can, I mean,
I have
what is
access to it.
exactly the iOS 15 deliver? Keith, you've been running it since the early beta. And when I asked you yesterday about what good is it, you didn't come up with anything.
no, it's kind of invisible to me now. I've been running it since Worldwide Developer Conference, whenever that was, in June sometime. And I'm also I'm doing this show on the Mac with Monterey as well. By the time you get into it, actually all the differences disappear and it feels just like the one before from a human point of view. There are a list of new features, but you don't notice any of them really in real use. The only one that is kind of interesting, hasn't been shipped yet, which is the ability to drag a window from your Mac onto your iPad or iPhone as if it was an extra screen. So they've cleverly somehow figured out how to know that these devices are there. And the other one is turning your Mac into an AirPlay target so you can broadcast your iPhone onto your Mac. Things like that, which you couldn't do with 14.
Well, but you can do those things with using, for example, Duet, which is a really good piece of software actually, and a Chromecast also. So, but I mean, again, you're talking about an additional piece of hardware as opposed to having it all built into but that sounds pretty cool.
There is a lot of under the hood stuff, like the network privacy layer has been totally rewritten. So you can, your IP number can be blocked from being seen in the network stack. So all of Apple's stuff to do with you not being spied on is much more substantive in iOS.
Isn't that like a VPN though?
It's kind of like a VPN. Actually, they're using Cloudflare and a couple of other suppliers in the background, but it's basically a tunnel. It's kind of a tunnel.
So I never got to hear the answer from Dennis about, are you going to upgrade or not?
I said I'm saving all my money for a Tesla.
But
I want
then
to go. I want to go.
if I asked you about the
0 to 60.
Tesla, you would say that you're sitting on your money for something else, right?
I want to go 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. That's a lot more important to me than rack focusing.
I think one of the big
Market speaks.
one of the big features in the next iOS is being able to decipher text and photos, and turn it into text instead of bitmaps.
I think it's awesome, but I haven't used it yet. I haven't found a need for it. You know what I mean? So it's one of those fantastic things like, wow, they can do that. But
Well, I still don't know how to get when I'm in email, for example, I don't know how to turn on the transcription service.
I don't think we can.
We're starting to talk to our phones Siri more and more. So now I'm sitting there, I get a text message from somebody on the watch. I can do that. There's a button. You push the button and then you start to speak and it transcribes it and then you push send. How do you do that in email?
Isn't there a small little microphone in the bottom next to the?
Yeah, but that produces a file, a wave form. It does not.
Are you asking about doing it on your phone or on your Mac?
I'm talking about it on the phone.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a microphone right there. I sent.
Yeah,
I dictate on text and in email all the time.
Yeah, I don't think it's just a waveform.
You push that button.
And now it's
there are two different microphones.
It's transcribing right there.
Okay, so you have somehow discovered how to do this. I have not been able to.
I can give you the cheat version. You say, "Hey Siri, send an email to Keith," and Siri says, "What do you want to say?" And then you speak what you want to say in the email, and the whole thing is voice driven. So you don't have to click any buttons.
And it comes up with text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go, Steve.
All right, I'll try that.
Yay.
Did you ever try this, Steve? Did you ever try this? Ask Google, how do I dictate emails on iPhone? Google will answer it.
Pretty much everything in the world. It's like
the
Google
YouTube
is Amazon.
conversation. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
YouTube is wonderful. It'll give you the answers to everything that you need to do to be able to fix your plumbing. However,
it works too.
What our audience should know is that Steve's method of solving any problem actually is to call me.
Yes.
That's true. That's true.
And listen, Keith,
but then I have to get past Tina saying, "No, don't call him." So there's an extra, step that I have to take, and there's political capital that I expend in that correct analysis. Okay.
He saved my life with.
Let me say this, Steve. I'll give you a simple answer. If you bring up your keyboard and look in the lower right corner, you'll see a microphone.
What keyboard? And how do I bring it up?
When you start to
on the phone?
Well, you have a software keyboard.
How do you get?
That's been a part of the iPhone since it was introduced.
I remember, but how do I do it?
You start a new email and just tap in the text area, and the keyboard will come up.
Okay, and then where's the
bottom of the screen on the right corner?
Bottom right.
Okay, well,
I just want to say I'm the technology Luddite here,
and you know how to do it.
Well, I've effectively neutralized that with this comment.
I am. I do not use voice for anything, actually, because it seems weird to me. So I've got this psychological barrier where I'd rather type than use.
So the answer to my question is, well, it's weird, and I don't want to do it that way. That's not an acceptable answer for me.
I agree.
Okay.
I was just sharing. I was being honest.
Well, I'm glad that I've avoided having to call you to get that answer.
I don't use voice either. Okay.
I use it all the time. I think a lot of people are starting to use it. The data that I've been reading has shown like a pretty significant uptick in people using voice, whether it's Siri or Alexa or Google.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
absolutely.
For me, it's always a balance between how many typos I'll make with my thumbs versus how many times the dictation software will misinterpret what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And basically, they're both pretty lousy.
Yeah, except that, I can transcribe the show it takes about 30 minutes, and I can read it laboriously. Or I can just use search and find the word that I'm looking for, and I go directly to it. That is not a difficult hurdle for using audio. And it's getting more and more. I mean, I think that the significance of the rack focus thing is totally not about professionals using the iPhone. They're still going to use their ikegamis or whatever the hell it is. The significance is that it's introducing a software layer of innovation similar to the one that is being introduced in the studios with this LED driven move beyond
Mandalorian.
Yes, Mandalorian.
Yeah.
There's a long article that I'll put in the app about some Netflix production.
Yeah, I just had that in my
Netflix in Germany has
yeah.
put up a studio that
That's the one.
Technology.
Yeah. So
I wrote about that in my newsletter a couple of days ago, I think. So,
Frank, everything
That's
is
where I saw it. That's where I saw it.
so you guys are reading it. That's good.
So my point would be that this is a revolution that is being driven by the success of the streaming market, and it's going to have a whole lot more to do with how we use our phones than anything else. So, Apple is, as usual, they're slightly ahead of the curve in terms of basically selling a 0.01 upgrade for $800 divided by 12. And I think the other impact is that they're going to have a problem with people like me that are on the upgrade program, but because of my reticence to jump to the top of the queue, that upgrade won't reach the year mark for me until like February.
I just hope that my wife is not watching this show, because I am going to go order one of these things as soon as we're done.
But you'll get a lot of value by selling your 12.
I want to modify my bet to 180 days for Steve, because I didn't realize his.
Well, at least you're listening. At least you're listening.
So the other thing, though, is a lot of people were talking about the new iPad Mini as though it is. Bye, Brent. Ciao,
All right,
mein.
Brent.
Brent, thank
See you
you.
next week.
Let me leave you with this. Bye.
I thought the applause was better.
Oh, okay. What do you like? Crickets? You want crickets?
Crickets.
There we go.
Yeah, crickets doesn't read as crickets, however.
A little bit.
Let me hear the applause.
Oh, there's Keith coming in strong and hot.
Oh, how do I stop it?
This is how you stop
wait.
it. This is how
All
you
right.
stop it, Keith. Leave like this.
Let me mute Keith. Did he leave? He left already. God damn it. I wanted to hear the applause again.
Applause. Oh, well.
I-
We can all do it.
There we go.
All right.
Yay.
All right. So we've got just a couple minutes because Tina has another Zoom call to.
Something more important to do.
Kind of.
So we're talking about the iPad Mini.
Yeah. What
about
have
it?
we heard about that? Is it looks pretty good, actually, but
It's pretty good.
It looks like the 13 Pro Max is what it
Yeah.
looks.
If you don't if you don't need the super cameras, it's
that's what I was going to ask.
Good alternative to a large iPhone.
I had not heard about the camera situation on it. That's still sort of my major question about that, and you just answered it.
It's just a regular camera. It's just like one lens. But the
Mm.
best thing about it is it uses the Apple Pencil 2. That's the magnetic one. That's really good. So it's like the iPad Pro in a lot of ways, and it uses the Apple Pencil 2. So if you're
it's like a miniature iPad Pro. I think it's a good way of putting it.
Okay.
And it's not expensive, is it? It's like $400, something like
Well,
that.
that'll depend on whether you get it with a cell phone in it and how much memory you get.
And the keyboard, is the Magic Keyboard work?
No.
Is there a
no,
different one?
no.
Okay, so I'm not getting it. Anything else?
You can use a Bluetooth keyboard with it if you want to, and mouse.
I could use a Bluetooth keyboard on my refrigerator if I wanted to.
Okay.
Okay, so And then the watch, I have no interest in upgrading the watch. I love the watch that I've got is excellent.
I'm not going to upgrade the watch either, which is the first time I haven't, because the main benefit seems to be a slightly larger screen real estate on a slightly better screen. And I don't know that it doesn't.
I was hoping for some more health sensors. I was listening for that and I didn't hear it. So I'm with you. I'm not upgrading my watch this year.
Oh,
No. Okay. Anything else that we want to talk about before we drop?
There will be another Apple show in October where whatever comes after the M1 or more application of the M1, we don't know which yet, but there'll be more hardware coming before Christmas.
Yes.
Great.
They're going to I think kill the high end of the current MacBook Pro line, which is now on Intel, and substitute Apple Silicon for it.
Well,
So we expect some high end MacBooks and possibly a new, more powerful Apple Mini.
what was I reading about them killing the 12 and the 12 Pro? Basically, when you go now to buy one at the Apple Store, you're going to be buying a refurbished 12, something like that. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
that's only if Steve trades his in.
Exactly.
And I do, and me too.
You do.
So yeah, we do
But
that.
you know,
we do
your
that.
10,
You do.
your 10 is still the where the broad market is, Dennis.
Yeah.
Does the 10 use the facial recognition? Was that the
Yes.
first one with facial
Yeah.
recognition?
Yes, it
yeah.
is.
That's nice. That's nice.
The entry level is now going to be the 11. You can get the 11, the SE, the 12, the 13, or the 13 Pro. You can't get the Pro in anything except the 13 now.
Ah, okay.
But you can
Well-
go back and get 11, SE, 12, 13.
Or buy a refurbished 12 Pro.
Yes.
Okay. Once around the table, any last thoughts? They can only be 15 words or less. Starting with Frank.
Well, the only other thing that I would have wanted to talk about, which we touched on for a second, which we can do at another show, is
Okay,
where do we
15 words.
stand?
You're done.
Is where do we stand with streaming because of COVID and theatrical releases of films? So that whole dual release situation is something.
Well, I
that's
would
on
give
my mind.
Dennis an opportunity for napping. So we'll save that. That's correct. It's a good question, though. I think that streaming wins. I think theaters are going to turn into restaurants, and we go from there. Okay, Dennis.
I'm not happy with the way we're talking about third vaccine shots. I think the government is not talking about immunological memory, which is probably because it's so hard to pronounce. But I think we're really missing something there.
Especially for older people.
Yeah.
There was a meeting today which I didn't listen to because I'm here, which may have
It's still
some
going
light
on.
to shed on it.
It's
What
still
was it
going on.
about?
You're talking about T cells, Dennis.
Do you want to talk about T cells?
No, is that what you were referring to when you talked about immune?
Well, T2, T4, Bs. It's a lot of stuff. It's not just antibodies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but all the vaccine does is it gives a short-term boost to actual antibodies, but your body naturally puts those into hibernation unless you catch the disease, and the memory cells can reproduce those antibodies as long as they recognize the invader. So,
Correct.
So it's correct that the key is whether it produces those memories that your body can use in future, which it does seem to, but all the vaccines seem to.
I'm wondering
Exactly.
though if events like film festivals and CES and things like that, if it's just too soon for those things. I'm actually worried about this trip that I'm supposed to be going on to go south.
I'm becoming more and more attuned to the value proposition of not going anywhere publicly. I think that I think we've already passed some change in our lives where we consider hanging out at a bar or that kind of behavior as something that we're going to be doing a great deal of. I just think that people are starting to value this kind of communication because it's so easier to do, and the buildup of paranoia about not knowing who you've come in contact with or through those people come in contact with, I think is until there's a real handle on contact tracing, which is going to mean after the unvaccinated rebellion is dealt with. I just think that, it doesn't look like anything shorter than 6 months at a minimum.
I have a question for Denis. So I have an individual who I was supposed to have, I was supposed to work with, who had COVID and came through it. And because they've come through it, their belief is that their immune system is in such good shape, they don't need to take the vaccine. Because of that, I chose to not have a relationship at all with that person, professional in any way, because that just seemed wrong to me.
There is data that he's wrong. I mean, you can Google it.
Is your name Denis?
I'm sorry.
Quickly, Denis, give it the answer that you purport to have.
The answer is you don't know. This is all real time science, and we don't know what the perfect answer is. We can say that his immune system got him through COVID. It was probably COVID alpha, but then again, my vaccination is for COVID alpha, and I'm not too concerned about Delta. So your friend, I think, has a valid point. Although I would have to say, like me, he's not qualified to make that point.
Well, you're certainly more qualified than most people.
Okay,
Hi, Michael.
Keith, last point, if you have one.
I was on a call this morning for my new startup, which I announced in my newsletter, Signal Rank Corporation, and I deleted the travel line in the P&L. So clearly, I do not think people are going to be traveling for the next.
Or you made a mistake.
Yeah.
That wasn't there. There's supposed to be an announcement, I think, today here in the UK about changing the traffic light system and the ability to, or it used to cost a lot of money to get tests that had to be approved by the government, whether you go or come in and out of the UK. And those tests were very expensive. The NHS free tests were not accepted. So there's some change in that today. And I'm not quite sure what that change is yet. I don't know.
Michael,
have you heard?
Last thoughts?
Last thoughts? Yes, I have a book to recommend. James Shapiro, a Shakespeare scholar, put out a book last year, which is just out in paperback, called Shakespeare in a Divided America. It's one of the most thrilling books I've read about American history. He has done enormous, wonderful research on how Shakespeare has been performed in America, and he connects it to attitudes towards slavery. It turns out John Quincy Adams hated Desdemona for leaving her father and running off with a black man. With assassination, it turns out that both Booth and Lincoln were Shakespeare fans. There are class struggles, riots caused by Shakespeare performances, and it's bookended with a performance that was done by the Public Theater in New York, where Julius Caesar was decked out to look like Trump, and Calpurnia had an accent like Melania's.
So put that in the chat so we can.
I will do that. I mean,
Great.
the book has gotten so many wonderful reviews, and it has earned them. I knew nothing about it, but I saw it in a bookstore, and I just caught my eye, and it's one of the best books I've read in a long time.
Sounds like my book about the Beatles.
Exactly.
Okay, I want to thank Brent Leary for his cooperation in this effort. I want to thank Frank Radice. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks, Steve.
Keith Teare, thanks.
Very welcome. It was fun.
Michael Markman.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
And the chair of Denis Pombriant.
He
Thanks.
probably went to get his cat.
Well, whatever. He'll see this later on worldwide global television. Thanks to our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor.
Thanks, guys. Great show.
Golf club.
And thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
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 Oh,
Bye-bye.
Say good night, Gracie.
I just went to the bathroom. Notice how the camera did not follow me.
I thought you went to get one of the cats.
Okay, we're in goodbye land. Thank you, Denis.
Always a pleasure.
Our streamers can still see and hear us.
Another reason